We're going to begin our show this morning with major new developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. U.S. officials tell NBC News that the Biden administration has given the green light for Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles to strike inside Russia. The approval applies to what's called the Army Tactical Missile Systems, which Ukraine had already been using in its own territory. But up until now, President Biden had resisted their use inside Russia amid concerns it could escalate the conflict further. This policy reversal comes as Russia carried out its largest missile and drone attack on Ukraine since August yesterday, targeting the country's power grid. The situation in Ukraine is expected to be among the top issues at today's G20 meeting in Brazil, which is the final international summit of Mr. Biden's presidency. We have NBC News senior White House Kelly O'Donnell at the G20 in Rio de Janeiro. She joins us now. Kelly, good morning. Thanks for being here. So, this is a real U-turn by the Biden administration to allow Ukraine to use these missiles inside Russia. Why has the president decided to do this now? What are we learning? And is there still concern that this move does escalate things?
Well, it's important to put this in the context of what's happening from the Russia side as well, and to also make clear that the White House, the Pentagon, the president himself are not discussing this move openly. Our reporting tells us that, according to U.S. officials, this has in fact been approved. But that gives you a sense of the sensitivity here. When they don't discuss things openly and publicly, it gives you an idea of the concerns about military operations, the operational security involved, and all of the diplomatic sensitivities. At the same time, in the larger context, what the president has been clearly concerned about are escalations on the Russian side. For example, the increase in their military operations, and most notably that North Korea has sent troops to Russia to try to help defend Russia. Having a foreign country sending its military is what the U.S. will say is an escalation on the Russian side, and that President Biden has always said that kind of a change from the Russia side would prompt a response from the U.S. So while it is a policy change from the U.S. side, it is one that could be viewed as an escalation. The U.S. would say that it is in response to escalation from the Russian side. This limited capability of using American-made weapons to strike inside Russia is for, as we are told by sources, a targeted approach. We will see at some point if they discuss it more openly. They are not doing that yet. But certainly support for Ukraine is a big priority for President Biden and many international allies. And that is very much a topic here for the G20. They have many issues to discuss, but Ukraine, defending a democracy, and continuing support is certainly chief among them.
Now, Kelly, we know that Moscow had previously warned the U.S. against this move. What are we hearing from the Kremlin this morning as this news comes to light?
Well, they have described it as throwing an accelerant on the fire. And certainly the White House has already responded, senior officials we've talked to, saying the accelerant or the throwing gas on the fire was really done by Russia itself with its escalating military operations and by bringing in foreign support. We know that China and North Korea have been supporting Russia, but the presence of North Korean troops in Russia to fortify Russian forces is something the U.S. would contend is an escalation on their part. So clearly there is strong rhetoric. Clearly there is intensity on this issue, as there has been from the start of the war. And the U.S. is committed, they say, to ongoing help to help Ukraine. We also expect additional military contributions that are periodically announced at these kinds of important moments to say what specific elements are being offered to the Ukrainians. We expect more of that to be discussed publicly while we're here in Brazil for the G20.
So, Kelly, has this all expected to play out at the G20 summit today? What do we think will happen in terms of those conversations you mentioned? Can we expect anything substantive from the president, given he now only has, 2 months or so left in his presidency?
Well, I would argue, and certainly the U.S. would say, there's only one president at a time, and he will use all of those 2 months. You noted that this is the final global summit, and that is significant. This is an opportunity for the president to try to fortify relations, to give an indication of the U.S. positions that he thinks are durable, even with a transition of government. They're talking very openly about the fact that, of course, there will be a transition, but they are trying to secure as many American positions and certainly the views of the Biden administration. Now, this meeting is about much more than Ukraine. The G20 brings together these important economic discussions. It covers a whole range of issues, from climate to energy to national security. So there will be a lot of conversations about a range of issues. Ukraine is certainly a significant one. And this is also an opportunity for those face-to-face meetings that the president has had throughout his 50 years in public life. And having a few more of those is certainly significant in trying to kind of lay the landscape for an American transition of power. Savannah?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell from Rio for us. Thank you so much. Well, President-elect Trump is already almost finished announcing his picks for his second cabinet just 2 weeks after winning the election. Over the weekend, he made 2 more big announcements, tapping oil and gas company CEO Chris Wright to lead the Department of Energy and Brendan Carr for chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. You can see some other picks on your screen here. Trump has just 6 more nominations to go, but the pushback against 2 of his choices is growing, even among some Republicans. That could tee up some battles during the confirmation process. On Sunday, though, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson told Fox News he was open to bypassing the normal process in order to get Trump's picks confirmed if necessary. Listen to this.
I wish the Senate would simply do its job of advice and consent and allow the president to put the persons in his cabinet of his choosing. But if this thing bogs down, it would be a great detriment to the country, to the American people. We'll evaluate all that at the appropriate time, and we'll make the appropriate decision. There may be a function for that, and we'll have to see how it plays out.
NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa joins me now from West Palm Beach, Florida, to break it all down for us. Ali, so we're going to get into some of the controversy in some of these picks in just a minute. But first, tell us more about who President-elect Trump is putting forward to lead the Department of Energy and the FCC.
Yes, Savannah, good morning. Well, as you mentioned, we saw this steady drip of announcements for President-elect Trump's cabinet continue over the weekend, with Trump announcing his pick for fracking company CEO Chris Wright to lead the Department of Energy. And he's chosen the FCC's top Republican, Brendan Carr, to lead that independent agency that regulates the country's communications. And Wright has no prior government experience. He is a staunch defender of fossil fuels. And as a defender of that, we expect him to help fulfill Trump's longstanding promise to maximize oil and gas production in this country. Because of that, we saw oil industry executives celebrating this decision, but also environmental advocacy groups condemning this pick of Wright, who has denied that there's a worsening climate crisis across the world. Now, Brendan Carr has been a very vocal critic of the Biden administration's telecommunications policies for years. He has slowly started to embrace Trump's policies and Trump's beliefs when it comes to big tech and the media. And the president-elect, in a statement announcing this pick of Carr, called him a warrior for free speech and says he has fought against the regulatory lawfare, stifling Americans' freedoms and held back our economy. And as you mentioned, Savannah, this is going very quickly. It's been less than 2 weeks since the election, and President-elect Trump has already announced picks for more than half of his cabinet.
Ali, let's now talk about some of these controversies that have bubbled up. We've been covering the pushback here, and we're hearing allegations that his pick for defense secretary, that's former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, that he once paid a settlement to a woman who had accused him of sexual assault. He does not deny paying this woman, but he says whatever happened between them was consensual. What are the details here, though?
Yeah, that's right. The Washington Post breaking this news over the weekend that Hegseth paid a woman who accused him of sexual assault and had her sign a non-disclosure agreement. But Hegseth's attorney says that his client is completely innocent, and he calls this a consensual encounter. And the Post is saying that the unidentified woman's friend sent a memo that, we should note, NBC News has not seen, to the Trump transition team last week, alleging that Hegseth, quote, raped the then 30-year-old conservative group staffer in his room after drinking at a hotel bar. And this was all during a 2017 Republican conference in California. Police confirming that they investigated this after the woman filed a complaint, but no charges were ever formally filed. And Hegseth's attorney says that he paid this woman out of fear of losing his job at Fox News. This was during the height of the Me Too movement. His attorney saying in a statement, quote, "It was fully investigated by police and video surveillance, as well as multiple eyewitnesses' statements show that she was the aggressor. Mr. Hegseth is completely innocent. It wasn't until a couple of years later, after she lost her job, that she began trying to squeeze Mr. Hegseth for money." Savannah.
Hegseth has also been a vocal critic of the deadly U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, as has the former president, now president-elect. NBC News has learned that officials from the incoming Trump administration are looking into potentially punishing military officials who oversaw the botched withdrawal. What are you learning on that?
Yeah, our Pentagon team has new exclusive reporting that the Trump team is compiling this list of current and former military officials involved in the 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan, and they are considering creating a commission to investigate it, according to sources familiar with those plans. And this news is coming after, remember, there has been an independent review that found that both the Biden and Trump administrations were to blame for that botched withdrawal. NBC is also learning that the Trump team is exploring whether these officials involved in the withdrawal could actually be court-martialed or tried for potential charges in a military court. And you'll remember that Trump, as you mentioned, has repeatedly condemned that withdrawal that left 13 U.S. service members dead, also around 170 Afghan civilians, calling it one of the most embarrassing days in the history of our country. Savannah.
Ali Rafa covering it all for us this morning. Thank you very much. Well, now let's take a look at the brewing nomination fight over President-elect Trump's pick for Attorney General. That's former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. According to multiple people who spoke to NBC News, more than half of Senate Republicans do not see a path for Gaetz, who has no experience in law enforcement, to be confirmed as Attorney General and would not support him to lead the Justice Department. Now, despite that, Trump's transition team remains confident that Gaetz will be confirmed. House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Friday that he will strongly request that the House Ethics Committee not release its report detailing their investigation into allegations that Gaetz was involved in illicit drug use and sexual misconduct. The Speaker believes release of the report will influence Gaetz' confirmation. Now, Gaetz has denied any wrongdoing. We have NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joining us with more on this. Ali, good morning. So first, just tell us about the potential of this health ethics report, the type of shadow that it could cast over Gaetz' confirmation, and explain to us the fact that we're trying to not have it be released by House Speaker Mike Johnson.
Well, that's protocol here, technically speaking. The Speaker is saying that the reason he doesn't want this ethics report released or even leaked is because when a member resigns from Congress, typically that would end the ethics investigation because they are no longer a member of Congress and ethics investigates members of Congress. Nevertheless, when you consider what's actually in this report, which according to a lawyer for a girl who spoke with the committee, a woman told the House Ethics Committee that she saw Gaetz have sex with a minor. Again, that's according to her lawyer, and Gaetz maintains that he's never done anything wrong. But at the same time, when you're talking about allegations like that could be in this ethics report, it only adds to the shadow that it casts. And so technically, you've got the protocol piece of this. That's why the Speaker is saying that he doesn't want to see this report released. On the other hand, senators know that it exists. The media, the public, everyone knows that some kind of report exists. The Ethics Committee has been reporting for years. And now the question is, does anyone ever get to see it? In large part because of when Gaetz resigned from Congress and the typical way that this place functions.
So, Ali, when you say this is sort of standard protocol, has something like this happened before?
Look, this is really another moment where we're watching the Trump administration take us into somewhat uncharted territory here. The thing that is consistent, and you're going to hear this phrase a lot, is the role of the Senate to advise and consent to the nominees of the President of the United States. And that's where you're looking at this moment right now, where, yes, we have reporting that dozens of senators have deep concerns about Gates. Some of them won't even vote for him. At least they say that now. But this is a really big test moment, too. You've got Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, clearly in lockstep with Trump, all the way down to walking out at the fights at Madison Square Garden on Saturday night, literally walking out in lockstep. And then on the other side of the building, leading Senate Republicans, the freshly elected Senator John Thune, in a new role, someone who has sparred with Trump in the past. They patched up their relationship, but this is really going to be a key test for Thune. Does he pressure alongside the president people to confirm the president's nominees? Or does he not? And then you end up with people like Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., all of these others who have deep concern from Democrats and also some Republicans, but maybe they get confirmed anyway.
So, Ali, I mentioned that more than half, according to our reporting, of Senate Republicans don't see this path forward, at least when it comes to Gaetz. Yeah. Where does the confidence come from then within Team Trump that they can get these picks confirmed?
It's exactly what I was just talking about, which is you look at some of these senators that are speaking out. Yes, some of them are in safe seats. They've just been reelected. Others have tough re-election battles coming up in states that Trump has won. Politics is always a central consideration here. It's Washington and it's Congress, after all. But then the other piece of this, too, is this is a moment where Republicans are talking about Trump having a mandate. I don't know that you can say a mandate is 1.5 points in the popular vote that's still being counted, but they are. And so are Republicans going to use this moment where the president-elect is trying to put together his cabinet? Typically, there was a mindset on Capitol Hill, at least in the before times, let's say 10, 15 years ago, that presidents were allowed to have the cabinets that they chose. But we are in different times right now, a different moment right now. And is this the fight that Republicans pick to show their independence from the White House? I'm not sure. I do think that this is something we've talked about with Trump over and over again, the realities of this Congress, certainly on the House side, but also on the Senate side. The biggest difference between 2025 and 2017, the last time that Trump rolled into Washington and rolled into the White House, is the fact that Congress has been really remade in Trump's image. A lot more allies, a lot less people who are willing to stand up and say, hey, I'm not just going to go along to get along with the president. And this is the first true test of that, not just with Gaetz, but with this whole slate of cabinet appointees.
Ali Vitale, fabulous reporting as always. Thank you so much. Well, with just over 2 months until President-elect Trump takes office, several current and former senior Justice Department and FBI officials are now reaching out to defense lawyers. And that is because they're anticipating being criminally investigated by the incoming Trump administration as a form of retribution for investigations into the president-elect. This is according to 3 people with knowledge of the matters. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian joins us now with more of his reporting on this. Ken, good morning. So prior to his election win nearly 2 weeks ago, President-elect Trump was already threatening to go after what he sees as his political opponents. Some of these DOJ lawyers and FBI agents, they were already nervous about being targeted by people who are loyal to Mr. Trump, particularly members of Congress. Tell us about your reporting and what you're learning.
Good morning, Savannah. Yeah, that's right. These folks are actually taking those threats quite seriously, and they are reaching out to lawyers, both former Justice Department and FBI officials and former intelligence officials. For example, people who signed that infamous letter about the Hunter Biden laptop that Donald Trump has been targeting. Anybody who's worked for the Jack Smith special counsel investigation is feeling vulnerable. I should point out that I've been covering these investigations for years, and I'm not aware of a scintilla of evidence that anyone acted inappropriately. But that's been the allegation from the Trump team, and they have the power now, and they could appoint a special counsel on day one and gather up some FBI agents and start investigating these people, whether they did anything wrong or not. They're going to need lawyers. That's going to cost them money, and so that's the situation they're in, Savannah.
Ken, we haven't heard much from Attorney General Merrick Garland since the election. What's been some of the reaction from within the Justice Department to President-elect Trump victory? What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, let's divide it into 2 camps, right? There's the political leadership of the Justice Department appointed by the Biden administration. They're Democrats. They're, of course, terribly distraught. Merrick Garland feels like he led the Justice Department to a path of independence and integrity and put a lot of measures in place to try to make sure it couldn't be politicized. And he's now concerned, and people around him are concerned, that that is all going to go up in smoke in the first week of the Trump administration. Then you have the vast majority of Justice Department employees who are career public servants who oftentimes give up larger salaries in the private sector to do the people's work at the Justice Department. They are very concerned they're going to be asked to do things that are inappropriate. It's one thing to change policies. That happens all the time as Republicans and Democrats take the White House. They're used to that. But they are concerned about some of the rhetoric they're hearing from the Trump administration. They're concerned they're going to be asked to investigate people without evidence. And people who are retirement eligible in that group are considering leaving, Savannah.
So, Ken, as you, I'm sure we're hearing, we were just speaking with Ali Vitale about Matt Gaetz as Trump's pick to lead. According to your reporting, a former senior DOJ official who served during President-elect Trump's first term says he sees that particular pick for Attorney General as a sign of Mr. Trump's vow for political revenge. Explain that. Why is he in particular cause for alarm for these people who fear being targeted?
Well, I don't think anyone watching would be surprised by that statement. Matt Gaetz personifies the MAGA rage at the Justice Department and the unfounded allegations. He's been making them for years. He sits on the Judiciary Committee. He's had Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray before him in hearing after hearing, and each time he's taken the opportunity to accuse them of being corrupt and unethical, without evidence, I might add. But he's basically said he's going to take a blowtorch to this department, to the FBI, to the Justice Department, without regard for the merits of the situation. And there's a lot of concern. Question is whether he can be confirmed by the Senate. Savannah.
All right, Ken, thank you. It's going to be a stormy start to the week for parts of the country. Let's get a check on your Morning News Now weather. We have Michelle Grossman with us. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Great to see you. Yeah, we have a cold front that's moving through. It's pretty strong, and we're seeing the storms at this hour. We're going to continue to see the storms throughout the rest of today. So this is what we're looking at in terms of futurecast. Heavy rain. We could see potential flooding. We've already seen flooding this morning. We're going to see it from the southern plains all the way to the upper Midwest. Showers and gusty thunderstorms. Could see the chance of a few tornadoes as well. Then as we go throughout tomorrow, this is going to move off to the east. And yes, once again, we're going to see most of it fall apart to the northeast. So we're going to remain dry in the northeast. Could see a few showers throughout the mid-Atlantic. And then we're going to see the remnants of Sarah. What will be the remnants of Sarah as we go towards tomorrow? It's going to be pulled into this cold front. That's going to enhance the rainfall along the Gulf Coast. So we do have the potential for flooding there on Tuesday. Then by Wednesday, tropical showers and storms pushing across central Florida. Locally heavy rain once again will lead to some flooding. This is what radar looks like right now. It's been very, very busy. We have heavy rain falling. That's where you're seeing these bright colors. You see this line right here, most likely seeing some really gusty winds along this line. And we do have watches and warnings, too, because we are looking at the lightning. We're hearing the thunder and also really gusty winds. So we're going to continue to watch this. This will be the story as we go throughout this Monday. 6 million people impacted by flood alerts. We have Tulsa, Oklahoma City, into Wichita Falls because of that heavy rain falling. And it's falling over the same spots. And it will stay in place for a while as we go throughout the morning hours. 9 million at risk for severe weather today. Winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, especially where you see this yellow shading. So places like Lawton, Dallas, down to Waco. Could see some hail. We saw some hail earlier this morning. Also, a tornado or two is possible. This threat will move off on Tuesday to the Gulf Coast states. Again, the same possibilities with winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Could see a tornado or two possible as well. There's a lot of moisture to work with. It's warm, and we're going to see the enhancement of what will be left over from Sarah at that point. Because of that, we do have a flash flood risk along the Gulf Coast states, especially where you see that darker blue color destined over to New Orleans. This is why lots of rain is expected. The darker colors, the oranges, yellows, and reds. Pensacola, New Orleans, Montgomery could see over 2 to 3 inches of rain. That's one of the big stories. Another story, still really dry in the Northeast. Drought conditions do linger. And also look at these temperatures still well above normal for this time of year. D.C. in late November, we are looking at 13 degrees above average, 70 today, 74 in Atlanta, 72 in St. Louis. Big difference as we head towards the west. That's a dip in the jet stream, allowing that cool Canadian air down. And we're looking at temperatures in the 40s in most spots. And that's going to bring some mountain snow as well out west. The west remains very unsettled, too.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.